Hey.
Intel.
Don't let the cat step on the keyboard.
She already stepped on here. Imagine she stepped on control and then she stepped on control and shift and then she stepped on W. That would delete a window.
I'm going to go get my comb. My hair is poofy.
And sit in your chair. Oh. Poor kitty.
You nuzzling the cat? All right. Hey, Nolan, sweetie, I need you to get up, okay? The cat can stay there.
Can I watch some of you?
No, you've already had your TV time today, sweetie. Okay. Mom could use your help outside, though. I hope you're enjoying this, Patricia. Hey, Bob, glad to see you got the link. Are you retired now?
Yes, I got the link. Thanks. And yes, I am.
Well, for those people who put their non-Intel email addresses inside the Zoom registration, I'll start emailing the meeting invites to those as well. Because we've had quite a few people that are retiring, or I had some people that were moving to other companies that called me up and said, hey, how do we still go to this meeting? And so I think we're going to start going hybrid a little bit. Ooh, I just got an email from the speaker. Let's hope it's good news. He accepted the invitation.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Oh, Richard, you're right there.
I'm like a ninja. I'm sorry.
All right, we've got 153 people registered for our meeting today. We tend to get, we used to get about 60% of those people, but we've been getting 50-ish recently for some reason.
I wonder with rising interest rates, there's a little bit of FOMO. So now
maybe that's it. I think some of it also has to do with the fact that I moved over from Zoom. At Intel, we usually use Microsoft Teams, and I think there's a certain amount of drop off because of that. But we're also getting people like Bob, who, congratulations, he's retired, but that means that he's no longer getting the internal company emails anymore. So we've had to set up a different way of sending out. I hope you don't mind that I'm announcing that you're retired, Bob. Sorry.
No. I can't tell you how many people know, so it's it's not a secret. No, I sent an email out. I've been at Intel I was at Intel for 34 years. I probably know like 1,000 people at Intel. So yeah, a lot of people know.
Okay, good.
So people aren't bitter on who you didn't invite to the retirement party?
Yeah, COVID kind of messed some of that up, but yeah.
All right, we'll wait a few more minutes to get some more people on. Hopefully people are finding their way through. Hey, I want to know from you guys, how can I make the finding this meeting easier? Is the registration page on Zoom a big pain in the neck? I could probably eliminate it, but I also want to start capturing emails so that people that are retiring or moving on to different companies can continue to come to the meeting. Is it a pain in the neck to go through the Zoom registration process? Do you think it's cutting down on the attendance? That's the opening question for today while we're waiting for more people to come in. And of course, I also want to hear, is there anything that you think we could do to make this club better? I want to hear your thoughts and opinions, whether it's have more discussion groups. Hey, if we wanted to have a book club and read through a real estate book together, whatever it is, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hey, Daniel, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Hey, Samuel.
Yeah, right on. I'm a little congested, so I'm not going to come off camera. You just got to hear my congestion today.
It's loud and clear.
Yeah, right on. Hey, so my feedback is I don't feel like Zoom is a hindrance, because if you want the information, you want the information. However, I will say that I like the convenience of using Teams from my mobile. And for some reason, when I click on the link for this one, I don't get it right off the back from my Teams. I think it's just a few more clicks, and that, in a sense, maybe slightly inconveniencing, but it wouldn't stop me from logging in, no.
Okay. Yeah, I think the reason we moved from Teams to Zoom was, one, we kept creating groups on Teams, and somebody on the administrative side would delete all our attendees. Like, people would sign up and register for the group, and then 3 days later, the entire list would be empty. So I don't know what was going on there. I have no idea who was doing it, or even if it was a person doing it.
Wow.
So there was that. And then it is really convenient to get, the transcripts and have a location where the video is recorded on my calendar. Zoom has similar features, but they're not quite as convenient as Teams, to be honest.
Got it.
So hopefully it's still convenient for you guys.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, we've got 38 people in the room. Now, Richard, I have only spoken to a handful of times and some emails,
Yeah.
but you've been pretty active on Bigger Pockets, and I have been looking around on Bigger Pockets for people that look like they know what they're talking about.
Then I did my job.
So good job.
Fake it till you make it. All right.
Yeah. And so anyway, you're here. You're a realtor in Los Angeles, which in and of itself is a fascinating topic, the real estate market in Los Angeles. I hope you share a lot about that. Actually, I would love to hear more about that. And we have no small amount of people that are in California in this meeting. Actually the largest group of people that attend this meeting are from Folsom, California. The second largest is San Jose. And then Portland is the second largest. The third largest is San Jose, and the fourth largest is Chandler, Arizona. So we've got a good West Coast mix here, being a tech company.
I grew up in Alameda, which isn't far from San Jose, and then I spent my last 2 years of high school in Roseville, which is right by Folsom. So I'm familiar with the areas.
Very nice, very nice. So we're waiting for a few more people to join. We'll wait for like 1 more minute, and then we'll kick this off. Anybody have it? Oh, go ahead.
I'll say you guys can see and hear me all right? Okay.
Yep. Anybody here have any interesting real estate news? Did somebody buy a property, sell a property, have a encounter with a tenant that was good or bad? Any stories that you want to share while we're waiting for the quorum of people to come in?
Actually, I have a story. I just
Go for it.
closed on a fourplex in Las Vegas, like literally signed the documents yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The one interesting thing that I wanted to share with the team, with the group is I started out with a really high offer. And based on the home inspection, I was actually able to reduce it to like by 25 grand. And then by the time the appraisal came, it was still lower than my offer. And I was able to reduce it another 10 grand. So it's a very different market now. And I thought I'd share that with the team, that negotiations now are back on the table compared to like what we were seeing about 1 year to 2 years out.
That's good to know. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Do you want to? Well, I won't. Our speaker's Richard. I won't start interviewing you, but congratulations.
No. If you have questions, if I can answer it, I will share.
Let's open it up to the rest of the people here. Are there any other stories that people would like to share before we go to our speaker?
Hey, yeah, this is Christy. I'm new to this. This is my first time here, but I have a
Welcome.
property, and this year they recently passed a law where you're not allowed to do the VRBO type of rentals for less than 30 days. So I was just curious if anyone else has had experience with that kind of law.
Where are you located? Where's the property located?
This property is in South Lake Tahoe, California.
Oh. Yeah, I can't say about South Lake Tahoe, but in Folsom, it depends. If you're ADU, well, actually, you could still do VRBO if you wish, at least in Folsom area. But if you're using it with an ADU, the permits for that ADU has to be before January 2020. And then you can still do short-term rentals.
I'm hearing a lot of people when they're stuck with month to month, they're doing traveling nurses. That's like their target demographic. It's kind of a combination of both.
I grew up in the Bay Area, and we had some friends that had a house up in Truckee near Lake Tahoe. And I always enjoyed going there as a kid. And I can understand why it would be so busy and why prices would be driven up in that area. It's a beautiful area. All right. Well, let's bring it over to Richard. Actually, one other thing. At the beginning of this call, I mentioned that we have most of our people in Folsom, Portland, San Jose, or Chandler. If you're coming to us from a different location, and I know there's some people from Texas and Virginia and Wisconsin and other places, but I would love to know where you're coming from. Could you just drop that into the chat just so we can be aware of where people are and where they're probably looking to invest? That way I can find more realtors in those areas and just be more aware with the content that we bring. Albuquerque, Oregon. Awesome. So Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome to the group.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Let me
Georgia, welcome.
did it. Oh, it's doing it differently. Sorry, of course, the one time when I did it, it didn't want to work. So let me do this. Just save it as a PDF.
You sent me the slides, so if you need me to, I can grab them and share them as well.
No worries, I just saved it as a PDF to make it easy. Okay. So, share the screen. All right, you guys can see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so you speak. My name is Rick Albert. You can call me Richard. Some people call me Ricky, whatever. But today, especially with people living in San Jose, Portland, things like that, we're going to talk a little bit about house hacking in a high price market. We are going to talk briefly about rent control and some other things as well. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and go through these, and then at the end, I can answer any questions you guys have. That way I can see all your beautiful faces. So who am I? So right off the bat, I've been involved in over 300 real estate transactions in Los Angeles. Before I was a real estate agent, I worked with a developer. I'm still, actually the company I work for is still affiliated with them. And we would buy foreclosures at the courthouse steps. So here I was, 22 years old, and they're like, here's $1.5 million, go bid on properties. So that was my first job straight out of college. I also helped with project management. Then I started going more on the retail side, helping clients buy, sell, house hack, things like that. I've currently been house hacked into 2 properties here in Los Angeles, which we'll go into. I'm actually also a case study in the house hacking strategy, which is a book published by BiggerPockets. I also manage a Facebook group for Southern California landlords. We currently have over 500 members, and it's continuing to grow, where we share, problems, successes, things like that. It's a growing community, and also allows me to know what's going on in real time. And I've also been interviewed for different real estate podcasts, like the House Hacking Success. I've been published in Bankrate, Apartment Therapy, The Real Deal, other articles, mostly on the investment side and a little bit on the agent side. So what we'll go over today, so we're going to go over my house hacks. We're also going to talk about the FHA 203K loans. For those that are in a high price market, this is a great way to get into house hacking where you need to do remodeling. If I were to start over, what would I be looking for in today's market? I would also how to find a deal. Investing in rent control markets. We'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons, some basic need to knows on house hacking, and then I'll kind of pitch my little offer to you guys, and then of course answer any questions you guys have. So we'll start with my house hacks. My first house hack was in 2015. It was a fixer condo. The previous owner had lived there for over 30 years, and she was a heavy smoker. So you can imagine how bad it smelled. The carpets, everything needed to be torn out. I bought it for $225,000. I put 10% down, used the other 10% towards the rehab. At the time, the cost was about $18,000. So you can see actually, that's actually a picture of my kitchen. So all new kitchen, new flooring, scraped ceilings, added lighting, updated electrical panel. Just about everything was redone. So my bills, I also refinanced twice in under a year. So the strategy I did there was I raised my interest rate as high as possible when I bought it. When you raise the interest rate, the lender in exchange will give you money towards closing costs. Because I knew after I was going to remodel it, I was going to refinance anyways. so it's less money out of my pocket. So I refinanced about a month after the remodel was done. Then 6 months later, that's when Brexit happened, and then rates dropped again. So I was like, screw it, I'm refinancing. So I refinanced again. And then that time I did the opposite. So I actually bought the rate down because the payback period was about 5 to 7 years. I knew I was going to keep it longer than that. So I paid like $1,000. And at the time I locked in a 3.375 interest rate, which is very low at the time. So my bills all in were about $1,500 before the HELOC. I ended up renting out the other room, and I included utilities and maid service. We'll go into why I did that later. And then now the current value is about $440,000. I'm now renting it out for $2,000 a month. And I'll be raising the rents once the city of LA allows us to. My tenants had been in there since the beginning, and it just so happened by the time I could raise rents, the city said, we're going to put a freeze on that. But I could probably raise rents in general about $500. On them, I might raise it $200 to maybe $250, depending on the circumstance. So that's my first house hack. The second house hack, which is the one I'm currently in, I purchased a fixer house. This is the house. I used actually a HELOC from my condo to buy this. So I bought it effectively for $0 down. I purchased it for $520,000. Originally, my offer was at $567,000. I negotiated the price down by over $40,000, which if you want, we can kind of dig into how I did that. Because it's the FHA 203K loan, it's a construction loan. So I had to put down 3.5% of the purchase price plus construction costs. But again, that all came from my HELOC. The rehab cost about $215,000. To do it, we used all the HELOC money, some personal funds, and the 203K, just because the cost ended up being much more. I did an extensive remodel in the house. I did an addition, which you can see the framing there. And then I converted the garage into an accessory dwelling unit, which those on the West Coast are very familiar with. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Then we did what's called an FHA streamlined refinance. So what that is you take one FHA loan and refinance into a new one. And you're allowed to do that every 6 months. And that actually dropped our bills by about $300 a month. So at this point, I'm married. My wife and I lived in the ADU and rented out the main house. So our portion was only about $1,300 a month. Then we did a second refinance where it dropped our bills by almost $1,200 a month. At that point, we could have lived in the ADU and only paid $400 a month. We decided to move into the main house, and I'm currently renting out the ADU for we'll call it $1,600 all in. And therefore our portion is only $1,800 a month to live in Los Angeles in a 3-bed, 2-bath house with a nice sized backyard and a good location. And the current value, because I just signed my loan docs for a HELOC, is at $955,000. So things to know about the FHA 203K loan. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is I think this is already popular in certain segments of the world, but I think it's going to get more popular because cost of construction keeps going up. And because inventory is limited, we need to figure out ways, hey, how can I buy a house, even competing against cash offers, and have the money to do the remodel? So typically it's a 45-day escrow. The longest delay is usually getting the contractor's bid, because the lender can't do anything until they have that bid. So there's a couple of ways around that. One is to get the contractor in like day one of entering escrow. The other option is if your realtor or you have construction experience, you can put a preliminary bid together, send it to the lender to get the ball rolling. You can always change the bid later, but at least it gets things going. That's what I just did for one of my clients who just did this loan. The next is ask the lender about the process and timeline for cutting checks. Most contractors want to get paid on a calendar every week, every 2 weeks. With this program, they're only getting paid on the work that's been done. So typically it should be under every 14 days, but you might want to have that conversation. The lender I used was horrible. The one check took 6 weeks, another one took 3 weeks, which is not normal. I found out because of that particular lender, so don't use Homebridge. Here's where it gets interesting. The lender will lend you up to 110% of the ARV appraised value. So let's say it appraises for $1 million, and that's after all the proposed work's being done. They'll lend you up to 1.1 million, an extra $100,000, minus of course the down payment. This is really important because some work you're going to do may not equate to dollar for dollar value in the appraiser's eyes. Great example is the ADUs. I can't speak for other markets, but here in Los Angeles, I'm seeing between 50 to 75,000 that an appraiser is giving in value. The problem is because materials and labor is up, it's costing between 125 at the lowest to about 150. So by having that extra 10% cushion, it gives you the extra money you need to do the work. And basically with this program, they'll do any sort of construction you want outside of new construction, meaning if you wanted to add a pool or if you wanted to do a standalone ADU from scratch, not a garage conversion. I did speak to what's called a HUD consultant. There's someone you work with during the process to verify work's being done. He said the loophole that some are doing is they're building the standalone ADU and then they're building out what's called a breezeway. So imagine like an overhang that connects the ADU to the main house. Now it's as if you did an addition. And then you can do whatever you want after the fact. But that is the workaround that I've been told works. In my case, I just did the garage conversion because it's, less expensive. So, I love Bigger Pockets. I listen to the podcasts. One of the big things in those podcasts is they'll interview people who bought homes 20, 30 years ago. The problem is that's not always the most relevant information. I bought my first house like 7 years ago. Nowadays, that's not always even relevant. So when I talk to people about house hacking, I have to rethink what would I do if I started over today? So this is what I would do. So first and foremost, I would think long-term. I would think, okay, what are some major developments happening in your area? I'd be thinking, what are some trends, right? Are gated communities becoming a trend? Is homelessness becoming a trend in certain neighborhoods? So I might want to avoid those neighborhoods, things like that. In terms of property specifications, I would look at no less than 4 or more bedrooms, and that's in total. So if it's a duplex, each one being 2 bedrooms. If it's a house, 3 bedroom plus an ADU. I helped a client, he just bought a place, it was a 4-bedroom house with an ADU. That seems to make the most sense in terms of the numbers. If I couldn't afford that, or I didn't want to go that route, I would be looking at 3+ bedroom for condos that need a lot of work. So let's dive into kind of the difference. So we'll start with the first one, the 3+ bedrooms. Because in high appreciating markets, right? Oregon's being one of them, New York, San Jose, as people get priced out of single family homes, they still need the bedroom count. So that's where condos come in. My house is a 3-bedroom house. It's currently renting, I could probably rent this out for probably about $3,500 a month. Down the street from me is a condo complex with 4-bedroom condos. Those would probably rent for $3,000 a month. So for some people where they're strapped for cash, they might navigate towards those other options. So for example, I know an investor, he bought a 4-bedroom condo. And when we were looking to buy, I said, dude, just buy it. He got it for $375. That was 3 years ago. Now it's worth about $500 because it's a 4-bedroom in a good area. So as people get priced out of single family homes, they have to go somewhere. The next part is needing a ton of work. So remodeling a house can be very time consuming, can be very expensive, as many people in this group know who've gone through remodels, right? Because you have to deal with a roof, sewer line, major electrical panel, things like that. Condos is mostly cosmetic. So it's much easier and faster to remodel a condo. The other thing that we're seeing in this market, and again, I'm speaking for Los Angeles, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in other high price markets, is we're seeing a big differential on price between fixer condos and move-in ready condos. Oftentimes bigger than the actual cost to remodel. Not quite enough to flip, but enough to actually have some margin, right? So I'm seeing, let's call it in the 400 to 600,000 range. I'm seeing gaps of about 10 to 15% for a fixer versus done condo. So maybe that's like 40 grand, but it's only going to cost you 25 to remodel, 30 to remodel, depending on what you want to do. So that's why I'd be looking there. The next one is I would consider going FHA and buying a 3 or 4 unit multifamily. Because again, with that, you can go at a higher loan to value, right? I think for LA County, which is the same as I believe Alameda County, it's probably the same in San Jose. It's about 1.2 million for a loan amount with only 3.5% down. So here you are being able to buy multiple units in a high appreciation market with only having to put 35 to 50 grand down. The next two, I always look to live just outside of desirable areas. Kind of the same as the 3+ bedroom. As people get priced out of one neighborhood, they have to go somewhere. So if you're in San Jose, maybe look in Hollister, right? Or Gilroy, a little bit more of a drive, but as people get priced out of San Jose, they have to go somewhere. And therefore I'm seeing higher rents and higher appreciation in value. And then I would explore Section 8 and VASH programs. VASH is the Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, same thing as Section 8, just for veterans. During 2020, almost every single segment of the housing market was struggling as far as rents, except for what the government was willing to pay. So the Section 8 tenants kept paying. So it is something to consider, especially if you're in a rent-controlled market where it's really hard to get tenants out if they stop paying. Here, because the government's subsidizing it, you have consistent payments. It's a little bit safer in some ways. I know someone that owns a couple apartment buildings with Section 8. He said his vacancy is about 3 days because there's just people just lined up with their vouchers looking for a place to live. So let's talk about how to find a deal in this market. So right off the bat, deals aren't found, they're made. Right? The market has changed. You have to look beyond the HGTV because that's what a lot of people are looking at. I can't tell you how many people I meet who are like, I want to buy a fixer. I saw what they did on TV and it only cost them $10,000, not realizing that they're in the middle of Alabama. But regardless, you have to kind of think outside the box. The next thing is I always look for high days on market. So wherever your market is, I immediately sort what's been sitting on the market. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter what it is, what's been sitting on the market. And there's always 2 reasons why a home or a property doesn't sell. First is the obvious one, it's the price. It's overpriced. Now, I've seen people argue like, oh no, it's not the price, it's the floor plan, it's a really bad driveway. It's like, look, it could be the worst floor plan in the world. If it was listed for $1, I'd buy it. So the price just isn't reflective of the actual use of the home. So for example, I looked at a property yesterday with my wife. We were thinking about buying it. The floor plan wasn't great, but I told my wife, at the right price, I'd buy it because I'd live with it. Because there's other aspects, it was a gated community, all of that. The second is the agent. So believe it or not, there are some really bad agents out there. And many of you who have talked to a lot of agents probably know this. I've seen some where they have very limited photos. Well, when you don't have a lot of photos, it gives off the impression it's a fixer when it may not be. I've seen ones where it had a really bad description. There was a property I saw where one photo, blurry, of this quasi house, really short description, he gave off the impression it was a teardown. So I saw it, it was a cosmetic fixer at best. It really wasn't actually that bad, but it sat on the market because nobody knew that. We ended up writing an offer, they didn't accept it, and then it ended up selling for less than what my client initially offered. So you have to take a look at that. The next I do kind of put in parentheses there is discount brokers. My experience, I've gotten really good deals when the listing agent is a discount broker. Actually, the founder and president, I think he's at least the CEO of the agency, it's a big brokerage. He had said in an interview, every time a Redfin agent was listing the property, he always got a deal for his clients. So the question is why? And the answer is, for those who aren't familiar with the discount model, there are some agents out there and it works for them. No knock on them. They do it based off either a flat fee or a much lower percentage rate than what a typical agent would charge. And so when you do a lower or a flat fee, it's based off volume. They got to close as many as possible, not so much on the price. So if they have a really good offer, or even if they have a lowball offer, but they're qualified, they're more inclined to convince their sellers to take it because they need to burn and turn. Or going back to the photos, they might use cell phone photos because they just don't have the margin to pay for the higher quality photos, to do the open houses, things like that. So if you see one that is listed by a discount broker, it's something to actually consider. As mentioned, look for properties with limited photos. It can give off a really bad impression. Also, dysfunctional floor plans. So over the last, we'll call it 5 to 7 years, because HGTV became like the third most watched cable television channel, everyone and their mother thinks they can take on a remodel. However, those same demographic of buyers can't see how to move walls. They can't figure out how to make this work. So if you can, you have a leg up, right? So you might have this weird living room off the side where people are like, I don't know what to do with this space. You might look and say, I can convert this to a bedroom. I help clients, they bought a duplex here in Los Angeles where there was an awkward dining room. We converted it into a third bedroom, right? So, and it only cost them $8,000 to do it. Some drywall, some permits, and they were done. So dysfunctional floor plans is huge. Also look at the payments, not the price, which, right, because we look at month-to-month cash flow. So what I'm starting to talk to people about is if you see a property on the market for a long time, run the numbers. So let's say it's listed for $1 million. See what the numbers work. If you offered $1 million, but you had the seller buy down your interest rate on your mortgage versus offering 50 grand less, chances are it'll be cheaper on a month-to-month basis to offer them full price. And then if you're the seller, it'll cost them less to lower your interest rate than it would be for them to do the full price reduction. So it's one way to make it kind of a win-win in a market where not everyone has the ability to do that. And as we know, no property is perfect. So you got to get creative. So and I put roof versus sewer line. Let's say you have a house where the roof is shot. So you're like, I don't want to buy this. I'd rather go buy something else. Well, there isn't anything to say that that next property doesn't have their own set of issues. And you don't know what you can and can't negotiate with that next one. So sometimes it might be better just to live with what you have. With that said, let's say it is a roof. Well, if you're getting a home warranty, pay the extra $150, now your roof's covered for the next year. If there's any leaks, anything like that, so then it gives you time to save up, right? So you can get creative and kind of plan things out in a better way. And there are other ways to find deals. Both of my house hacks, I've always negotiated based off inspection reports, or if it didn't appraise, whatever it might be. So now let's talk about investing in rent-controlled markets. So state of Oregon, California, even specifically San Francisco, Los Angeles. Go ahead and post in the comments. I don't know if San Jose has their own form of rent control. I wouldn't be surprised. New York, there are a lot of markets with rent control. So for some people, if you're an investor and you have choices, why would you even consider investing in a city with rent control when there's so many other states that don't have it, right? Texas, Alabama, Ohio. So there's pros and cons. And for those are in areas that don't have rent control, there's some nuances to it, but the gist is you can only raise rent a certain percentage, whether it's based off the consumer price index, whether it's 5% plus inflation. But more importantly, once you have a tenant in place, even though it was a bilateral contract to sign the lease, it becomes unilateral and the tenants get to decide if they want to leave or not. And you can't necessarily do no fault evictions, right? Unless you pay them money or there's some other agreement to be had. So it's not for everyone, but, and of course you want to make sure the numbers work. But here's what's interesting about rent control is it actually keeps inventory very, very low. And it does that for a couple of reasons. One, not everyone wants to invest, right? So in Los Angeles, the ADU is not subject to rent control, but if you build out an ADU on a single family home, now the single family home is subject to rent control, assuming that it was built prior to 1978. So because not everyone wants to go there, that keeps inventory low, right? That investor might be like, I don't want to buy a single family house and build out an ADU. So you may be the only choice when tenants are looking. The second is rent control only protects tenants who are already in place, right? So I know people, as well as those in rent control markets, probably know at least one person that's paying grossly below market rents. So what that does is it prevents them from moving. So again, it keeps inventory low because people aren't moving around. They're not moving around based off price point. They're not moving around because their family's expanding, right? They rather do the commute, or they're like, I have twins, but I'm staying in my 1-bedroom apartment. So it keeps inventory low. So again, when you have a vacancy, it just pushes those rents higher. And right now, what we're starting to see, especially in my landlords group, is before, landlords would only raise rents once every literally 5 years, I've seen. And they did that because they had good tenants. But now they're putting in place mechanisms to raise rents every year. So it's one of those things where you now have consistent growth in your rents, which if you have the triplexes, the fourplexes, that's a big part of your value, is how much rents you're commanding. And it's built in. And if you're a tenant, because rents are going up so much, they're more likely to pay. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but they're more likely to pay because they know if they move, they're going to pay a lot more. And typically in high-priced markets, that's where a lot of these rent control markets are. So if you take a look, I think Portland, I think I heard there's a new podcast by Bigger Pockets called On the Market. It's fantastic. They mentioned in the last year, rents have gone up 40% in Portland. New York's one of the most expensive markets, obviously San Francisco, Los Angeles. So typically where there is rent control is where we see really high appreciation. So you can always use your properties as a vessel to buy others, right? Because you can always leverage against it. So there are some pros and cons there. And plus a 3% increase on $3,000 a month is better than a 3% increase on $800 a month in the Midwest. So you just kind of have to pick what makes the most sense for you. All right, so you bought the property because you negotiated such a phenomenal deal because it's been sitting on the market for 3 months. Now you're ready to get roommates. So let's talk about a couple things that not everybody talks about with house hacking, primarily just because they don't have the experience or it just doesn't cross their minds. So first, I strongly recommend you actually hire the housekeeper, the gardener, have other people do that. There's a couple of reasons why. One, it does keep the property clean, right? So I remember in college, as many of us know, we weren't always the cleanest of people. And so this way, it's kind of like, hey, I don't have to clean somebody else's dishes. Of course, you could put rules in place, so it's not like it's totally trashed. And same with the gardener, making sure sprinklers are working. It's just good general maintenance. It also keeps your property up, so some tenants might be willing to pay more. And I would hope this probably resonates with this particular group, your time is extremely valuable, right? So my housekeeper who's actually here today, she charges $100 a visit. She comes twice a month. My gardener charges $110 a month. Like, I could be cleaning my place right now, or I could be talking to you, whatever has more value. So for you guys, you can spend quality time looking for deals, focusing on work, learning, doing something more productive. And it also makes it easier and less confrontational, because when you're living in the same place as someone, sometimes that can get kind of awkward. That's why I did it. It's like, look, I'm just gonna have a housekeeper. I don't want to deal with, do you want to split the cost? Or, hey, can you really please, mop the floors because I just did everything else. Think about think about your target tenant and work backwards. So if you're thinking my target is a working professional, then, okay, would a working professional live in these neighborhoods? Or, hey, what if I had a community printer and Wi-Fi? Or, hey, what if I had a segment of the house that I sectioned off and that was the quiet room so people could take professional phone calls? right? Gear it towards the type of tenant you want. Another great example is if you're into snowboarding, hey, look, I have a shed and everything's set up so you can put your snowboards in there, right? You start creating that demographic and you're going to attract the type of tribe that you want. And they also might pay a premium because of that. So think about experiences, right? Fire pits are like $100 and you can go on Facebook Marketplace to pick up some chairs. So people can walk through and like, oh my gosh, this is great. With my ADU, I designed it to where it has its own backyard and its own front patio. How much did that cost me? A couple $100 in fencing plus install. And all of a sudden people are like, this is amazing, right? Or I designed my ADU to where the kitchen and bathroom face my yard, so there's no windows. So it's as private as you can get, right? Those are the type of experiences that tenants want. And they want that fun feeling, especially because after COVID and with hyperinflation, people are staying home. They can't afford to go out to eat as much as they want. So can you create a great experience when they're home? Screen like you would any other potential tenant, right? Look at the income, look at their credit score. I'll tell you, most of the issues I'm seeing with tenants, a lot of it stems from bad screening or no screening at that, right? That seems to be the number one issue. And if your gut tells you this isn't the right person, don't accept them. That's just what even attorneys even recommend. And then set rules in place. This one's also often overlooked. So you have your lease, and then usually in your lease, you can have addendums. So your addendum could include rules, quiet hours. If you are splitting the utilities, how are they split? If they're not and you're including it, is there a cap? So for my tenants in the ADU who are paying me a flat $50 a month, if our water bill exceeds a certain price, then we split it. We split the difference. I did the same in my condo. That way it keeps it regulated and they don't just leave the water on all day, right? So it's a compromise. Guest rules. So for example, if a tenant has a guest, they also need to be present. I know a house hacker where he included the utilities, didn't put a cap, and all of a sudden he comes home, his roommate's out to the grocery store or whatever, but his roommate's girlfriend was there watching TV, AC was on, lights were on. And he's like, I'm paying the utility bill for us, not for your girlfriend, right? So think about guests, how long they can stay, can they stay overnight? And again, should they be there? Should the tenant be there? Should they not be there? Basically, like what rules and lifestyle do you want and apply it there? And even with your regular tenants, even if you're not house hacking, you should still have rules in place. Think about laundry hours or kitchen uses. So if you're in a unit where it's in unit washer dryer, awesome. But if there's 3 of you, you don't want laundry being left behind. So you could do, hey, room A gets Monday and Tuesday, room B gets Wednesday, Thursday, and I get Friday, Saturday, whatever it is. Same with kitchen, right? Just think about how you want to organize that. And then of course, think about parking. So going back to the example of the condos with 3+ bedrooms, oftentimes you only have 2 parking spots. So you have to think, okay, who's going to get those parking spots? Are they going to pay a premium for those parking spots? If you're house hacking, maybe you don't take the parking. When my wife and I lived in the ADU and rented out the main house, we parked on the street. I wanted the tenants to have off-street parking. That was really important. Or is there a way to create more parking? I've seen that as well. So here's my offer to you guys. So most of you guys are not in my market. That's fine. If you guys ever need help finding an agent, I'm happy to help. I am part of a nationwide network, but I do things a little bit differently. So I'll interview agents and I usually refer 2 to 3, right? Because you got to make sure it's a good fit for you. But here's the kicker. I'm actually part of your team now. So you get 2 for the price of 1. The thing I love about real estate is the strategy side. So I may not send you listings because I'm not in Portland. But if you're like, Rick, how should we structure the offer? How should we how do we negotiate the request for repairs? Here's a little quick strategy. Buyer letters for the price reductions goes such a long way. So instead of just submitting an request for repairs for 20,000, have your request for repairs say, see letter dated whatever. It forces the seller to then read your letter and your lender says, hey, look, we came across some issues, these are health and safety. We're just trying to think about me and my family. We're just trying to think about future tenants. And so we're humbly asking for this dollar amount, but it allows you to actually explain why you're asking it. So it doesn't seem like you're just being a dick. I don't know how else to word it. So, but those are stuff I can help with. Full disclosure, agents pay a referral fee to me. That's actually really common practice. What isn't common practice is I become part of the team. So if that's something you're interested in, of course, you can always reach out to me and we'll go into that. But it doesn't cost you anything to have me do that work. So if it's something you're interested in, of course, you can reach out to me. I'm active on all social media platforms, but primarily Instagram and YouTube. I try to post a lot of strategies rather than anything LA specific. There's my contact information and there's my personal website. And I hope that's okay. So now we can go into questions. Hopefully I didn't blow through that too fast.
That was great. All right, we do have a number of questions. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And once we're through the ones that are in the chat, we will open it up.
Okay.
All right. Are you going to go through and read them? Do you want me to read them to you?
Read them to me. There you go.
Okay.
I know how to read.
I should have been reading these more as we went along. So I think the first one that we have here is Glenn. Is this dependent on you living in one of the units, either for interest rates or for cap rate gain benefits, or is it just your preference? And maybe Glenn, you could let us know what you meant by is this dependent?
Are you talking about house hacking versus just buying a straight rental?
I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, your examples were all sort of describing the construct of you being physically in one of the units of what you were looking to buy.
Yes. So when you buy just a straight rental, you have to put a minimum of 20 to 30% down, and your interest rate's usually about at least a percentage point higher. So by me living in there, I'm allowed to put 3.5% down, allowed to put 10% down with a lower interest rate. And then anytime I refinance, I know there's a question about HELOCs, it's a home equity line of credit. It's like a second mortgage. By doing it owner occupied and then moving, then I've already locked in that rate. And then, yeah, my cash on cash return is going to be higher because I'm investing less money.
All right. Mai is asking, how can you tell if an agent is a discount broker?
Good question. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. There are certain companies that are known for that. No knock on Redfin. I've seen Redfin agents. I've met some. Some are very good, but they're just notorious for that. There was actually a couple companies that went out of business, but some popular ones were Rex Real Estate. Some were Purple Bricks. So sometimes you don't know, but if you're a realtor, you might know. So your realtor might say, this is a discount brokerage, right? Like homecoin.com is a discount brokerage, or just do a quick Google search.
Are there any pointed questions you could ask them in order to make that determination?
The name of the company is usually it. Yeah, because I mean, if you're looking at Coldwell Banker or something like that, you probably, it'd be really hard to tell, right? Because each agent does their own thing, but yeah, there are certain companies that specialize in being a discount brokerage. I'm just going to turn my fan on real quick.
That's right. Down in LA, it's probably pretty hot.
And
Here in Oregon, we're
Valley.
enjoying. Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the northern part of, which is always the hottest part.
Here in Oregon, we're enjoying the fact that the sun is finally out. All right. Samuel is asking, please share your wisdom with home warranties. They've been suspect in my experience. They always have a loophole on things that they cover. I don't trust them.
You and a lot of people. So the big thing, so for those who aren't familiar, when you buy a property, you have the option of getting a home warranty. You actually also have the option after the fact. It's just cheaper up front. And typically the seller pays it. So right off the bat, if the seller's paying for it, it's like, why not? If you're buying a fixer, what I've done in my negotiations is I've actually excluded it, because therefore, no matter what my offer is, the seller's already netting more money. Typically, for those that have used it, it's always been for big ticket items. So things like the AC. So like one of my clients, we bought it, and I told him, like, look, you're already remodeling the place. Just go as cheap as possible, because it was an option for 2 years that included the AC. So now your AC is working for that. You're never going to get full replacement. So you just have to read the fine print. For a roof, for example, there's one company, well, they'll pay up to 5 fixes per year, up to $1,000. So you just have to kind of read the fine print and see which one works more in your favor. But if the seller's paying for it, you should get something.
All right. Brooke said,
Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Brooke is asking the question, in the look at the payments, not the price example you mentioned, is it better to have the seller lower your interest rate versus offering less money? Can you explain how the seller is able to lower the interest rate?
Absolutely. So they will basically, you can spend money to lower your interest rate, just like you can raise your interest rate and the lender will give you money. I've done both. So what you go to the seller and say, I want a credit towards my closing costs of X number of dollars. And then you use that money to tell the lender, hey, instead of my interest rate being at 6%, I want it to be at 5.75. So you have to pay for it. You just want it out of the seller's pocket, not yours. And this only applies if you're going to keep the loan long enough.
All right. John is asking, can you speak to what impact the pandemic had on you with respect to the government freezing renters from paying rent, while also restricting you from evicting? Likewise, what measures are available for landlords to sustain a potential 18-month to 2-year period of not getting income, but still having to carry on the mortgage on an occupied property?
So it's been hell. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've been fortunate. My tenants actually paid all through the pandemic. And that was primarily because they worked in industries that just weren't affected. Healthcare, groceries, things like that. So what have a lot of people done? A lot of them end up going into some sort of like mortgage forbearance. During the pandemic, you actually didn't have to pay your insurance. You also didn't actually have to pay the water bill. Eventually you'd have to, right? Eventually you have to pay the insurance. Eventually you have to do all this stuff, but you could prolong it. So that helped lower the cost for a lot of them, but people did struggle. It was just a thing. So now that we're slowly getting out of it, some are protected, but not all tenants are. So now landlords are starting to strategize on how they're going to get them out. But yeah, so a lot of them kind of just waited it out. Some did negotiations. So I know one landlord where they struggled to pay. So like, okay, your rent's $2,500 a month. Can you pay $2,000 a month? And then you'll pay us back that $500 difference later on. Because I think the thing that you have to remind tenants is they're going to have to pay, whether it was through them or through the government. And if not, you're going to get evicted. It's not a matter of if, but when. Did that kind of answer most of that?
Yeah, it did. Sorry about that. I was on mute. So I appreciate the insights there, because I've often wondered, like, it's one of the things that kind of scares me away from looking into rental properties and investing in that way. So I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, that's why I put in my slide, like I would actually consider Section 8, right? Because no matter what, they're more likely to pay. So it kind of alleviates that. Now it's really coming down to due diligence, right? No evictions within the last 7 to 10 years. The income needs to be there, or they get a co-signer or guarantor. Like the vetting has just gotten much more rigorous than it did before.
Roger that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Henry is asking, is there a time limit that you have to stay in the home as owner occupied? I assume this is with respect to house hacking.
Yeah. So the loan documents typically say 1 year. With that said, it's all about the intention. So I actually know someone, and I'm not saying you should do this, but I know someone who refinanced and then moved out like a couple of months later. The lender called him out on it, and he just said, look, look at the aerial shot. My entire backyard's all pool. I need a yard for my kid. And so he moved like 5 miles away. And the lender's like, all right. So yeah, 1 year is what it says in the loan docs, but it's typically based off of the intention. And then if it's anything over 100 miles away, then lenders usually don't question it, but double check with the lender.
All right. And Vesh is
Sorry,
asking. Oh,
I have a
go ahead.
question on that.
Go for it.
What starts that that time limit? Is that like when the house is in escrow? Because
Mhm.
for example, like I live in a nice neighborhood. I'm paying pretty cheap rent, and I have a short commute, but I have an opportunity to buy a triplex on the opposite side of town. Now I don't necessarily want to move in, but I don't have 25% to put down. And I'd have to put 25% down, I've been told by my lender, because this is my second property. So it would like I couldn't do it any other way unless I do an FHA. So as far as that goes, like I know you said intent, but like what starts that process? Like say you've been there for 3 months and then you move back to where you were or something like that. Like what triggers that start date?
Yeah, so it starts when the loan effectively funds or like closing. So it'd really be, the clock starts when it closes. And then in terms of 3 months later, again, it's all about the intention. So they really want you there a year. So that's Realtor Rick. Friend Rick says, which are two very different people. Friend Rick says, if you keep making payments, I've never heard of a lender doing a drive-by, if that makes sense. But ethically, and the contract usually says you got to stay there for a year.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Vesh is asking about HELOCs. Any strategies to consider when using a HELOC off the current primary home for a new home down payment? Any tips on shopping around?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So right off the bat, just so everyone understands, typically lenders don't like you using HELOCs for a down payment, but once they issue the money, there's nothing they can do about it. So there's a couple of tips. So my first line of credit was with Bank of America, that for the condo. They did, you always want to max out your loan to value. The reason why I say that is because with lines of credit, you don't have to use the money. It's like a credit card. You only pay on what you use. So it's like, well, you might as well have the available funds, because why not? On my current one, I just signed the loan docs on Friday. We found a credit union that was willing to do up to 90%. So I just locked in like 200 grand. So I tend to look at the loan, LTV, loan to value. I look at the terms. So with Bank of America, and I'm just using them as an example. I'm not saying that they're good to do, because this was, 3 years ago. But it was things like I had to take out the full amount of money up front, and you had to open up an account with them. Like you had to look at all the nuances in order to get the best rate. The one I currently just signed up for is 10-year draw period. So how it works is, let's say the line of credit is good for, it's a 25-year loan. It's not like you can wait till year 24 to draw money. They only want you being able to draw money for a set period of time. So in this case, it's the first 10 years. The first 5 years is fixed rate I locked in 4.75. And then after that, it's adjustable. Many lines of credit are adjustable, so you need to factor that in. And then for what it's worth, on my last one's adjustable. It hasn't really adjusted. It never hit even 5%. But again, the market can change as it is right now. So I would look at the draw period, interest rate. Mine's also interest only payments for the first 10 years. So you have to then do forecasting. If you don't want to pay towards principal, what is that going to look like? For us, in 10 years, I'm going to be able to rent this house out for well more than enough to cover whatever payments come my way. Or because I'm in a high appreciating market, I could sell it and then do a 1031 exchange, and now that's paid off. So I would just really look at those terms and see if it makes sense for you.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
All right, Sunil is asking, would you be willing to share your slides with us?
Absolutely. I'll send you the updated slides, because I updated a couple things, but I'll send that to you.
All right, and I want to also let other people know, I'm going to drop a link into the chat right here. we have a SharePoint site where we have our Real Estate Speakers Hall of Fame, and Rick will be in the Hall of Fame amongst many, many other people who have previously spoken here. We'll put all your contact information there, your website, how people could reach out to you, the slide deck, and a recording, the video recording here.
Great.
So check that out. Let's see. Next, we have Tarl. You mentioned 3% rent increase better in the Midwest, increase in the Midwest compared to rent-controlled places. Can you elaborate on why it's better in a rent-controlled place?
Very good question. So because many rent-controlled areas are in higher priced markets, I'm talking more from a cash flow perspective. 3% on a $3,000 increase is like $90 versus a 3% increase in like the Midwest where rent might be $1,000 is only $30. So it's a higher cash flow, I should say, because you're just dealing with bigger numbers, right? Even from a appreciation from an asset perspective, it's okay. Oh, look, the market's increased by 5-6%. Well, that's 5-6% on $1 million asset versus 5 or 6% on a $100,000 asset. That sort of deal.
All right. And then Sunil is also asking, what are the tax implications of house hacking?
Good question. So you do pay taxes on the rent you receive. Some people don't report it. I always do. But then with that, you also get some tax write-offs because it is a partial investment property. It's almost like having a small business. So you do actually get some, so you do pay taxes, but then you get those tax write-offs, which can be helpful, especially I would imagine people in this group are mostly W-2. So it's actually a good strategy in that respect. I have a client, while in escrow, we did the calculations with the CPA, and she was able to shave off, he was predicting about $600 a month off her taxes. So then now she can go back to readjust her tax withholdings. So she's getting more money in her pocket each month.
All right. And I just noted the time. We are at the top of the hour. Could everybody take themselves off mute and thank Rick for coming in and talking to us? Let's hear it.
Hello, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Hey, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Daniel.
Great talk. This has been really good.
Like I said, if you guys need anything, let me know. I'm happy to come back.
Yep. What's the best way for people to contact you too? Is it email?
Yeah, email, phone, or like through the social media platforms. It'll be in the slides. It'll be the last slide.
Okay. And I'll put it up on our SharePoint site as well.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks. Bye.